Talk of progress this Monday night in the path to peace for Ukraine.
Some issues remain to be resolved.
A counter-proposal to the U.S.-backed plan and how Russia is reacting. Alberta's remedy for health care.
It is time to make bold changes.
The expansion of private medicine and what critics are worried about. Status update, which countries are banning social media for all children and some teenagers, and the pressure on Canada to follow suit. Plus, he was the voice of peace and positivity.
I can see clearly now, the rain is gone.
The legacy of reggae music legend Jimmy Cliff.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Ukraine's president calls it a critical moment, and European leaders say there is new momentum in talks on ending Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The so-called 28-point plan has been criticized for heavily favoring Russia and forcing Ukraine to give up territory to the aggressor. A counter-proposal makes Ukraine's sovereignty central to any deal, but the Kremlin has already called that unconstructive and unacceptable. Redmond Shannon reports on the flurry of talks and whether it's progress or posturing.
European leaders in Angola for a summit with their African counterparts, but with Ukraine very much on their minds.
There is a new momentum in peace negotiations.
Echoing American positivity after Sunday's US-Ukraine talks.
We had a very good day today. I think we made a tremendous amount of progress.
The transatlantic consensus, a contrast from last week when Ukraine and its European allies balked at a US-backed 28-point peace plan, a document reportedly with heavy Russian input. It proposed that Ukraine give up the remaining parts of the Donbas region that it has controlled throughout the war. Now a European-backed counterplan has proposed changes, reportedly including that territory negotiations only begin after there is a ceasefire along current battle lines, that Ukraine have a higher cap on its future military personnel at 800,000, and that there be no outright ban on Ukraine joining NATO, for now. It also proposes that Ukraine get NATO-style security guarantees from the US. A Kremlin advisor said the proposal is not acceptable.
Right now, we are at a critical moment.
Addressing the parliament of NATO member Sweden, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky stressed his red lines remain too.
That borders cannot be changed by force. That war criminals must not escape justice. And that the aggressor must pay fully for the war he started.
There may be agreements on some points, but on the key issues of territory and security, Ukraine and Russia are still far apart. Leaders from Ukraine's allies, including Canada, are set to meet virtually on Tuesday to discuss their next steps. Donna?
Redmond Shannon in London, thank you. Alberta's government is not giving up on its push for a new pipeline to the coast of British Columbia. There are reports some kind of preliminary plan will be announced this week between the federal government and Alberta. Prime Minister Mark Carney has said he's open to the idea of a pipeline, but BC's premier most certainly is not. And no private company has come forward yet saying it wants to build one. Mackenzie Gray has a reality check on where things stand.
Quick handshake, yes. The smiles between Ottawa and Alberta are likely to be even bigger this week, according to the Premier.
We've been going back and forth almost daily for probably the better part of the last 2 weeks, and I really hope that we will have an agreement ready and available to be released soon.
Soon is expected to be Thursday, when Daniel Smith and Mark Carney are likely to publicly announce the details of a memorandum of understanding on a potential new oil pipeline. But according to BC's Premier, it's not a done deal.
My expectation and hope is that BC's feedback is incorporated into any final agreement.
It's not just David Eby who's frustrated. West Coast Indigenous groups, including the BC Union of Indian Chiefs, are promising to do whatever it takes to stop a pipeline to BC's northwest coast.
We've all seen this movie before. And we know the ending of this movie, which is no pipeline.
That movie, the Northern Gateway Pipeline. After being approved in 2014, the Federal Court of Appeal quashed the approval in 2016. saying First Nations along the route were not adequately consulted. Enbridge was behind Northern Gateway, but as it stands now, no private company is proposing a new pipeline, leaving expectations low for the Conservative MP for the area, a former Haisla Nation council member.
I don't anticipate anything specific. I anticipate high-level general statements.
The specifics that could be included: a stronger industrial carbon tax, the Pathways Alliance carbon capture and storage project being built, Ottawa dumping the oil and gas emissions cap, and potentially giving a carve-out to the oil tanker ban off BC's northern coast, despite objections from David Eby. Ottawa's response: BC's already got plenty of other projects they wanted.
British Columbia has been the beneficiary of more projects on the list than any other jurisdiction.
Even if a deal comes this week, a route needs to be picked. First Nations who are staunchly against the project will need to be consulted, and the actual pipeline will need to be built, Donna, leaving multiple hurdles and many years before this dream could become a reality.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray, thank you. The Alberta government has introduced new legislation intended to expand private health care in that province to those who can afford to pay. It would allow some doctors to practice in both the public and private systems. The government insists there will be guardrails to protect patient access to care, and the new system will comply with the Canada Health Act. But as Heather Urix-West explains, those who study Canada's healthcare systems aren't so sure.
The proposed amendments in this bill represent a new era for healthcare in Alberta.
The Alberta government rolling out some big changes to how healthcare is delivered, opening the door for faster access to those with the ability to pay.
Alberta patients will continue to receive care through a strong public health system, but will also have the option to purchase services they are currently waiting for.
With public system wait times for things like hip and knee surgeries stretching up to 18 months, Albertans have had the option to travel out of province to pay for private care. Alberta's proposed dual practice model would remove that need to travel. Other private healthcare services would be available too, but for now, family doctors won't be able to move between the two systems, and there will be no private options for emergency services or cancer treatment.
To allow doctors to simultaneously work in the private market and in the public market is unprecedented and would be a violation of the Canada Health Act, depending on the details and depending on how it's structured.
The Federal Health Minister's office says it is committed to protecting the Canada Health Act and will be reviewing details of the Alberta bill in the coming days. But the Canadian Medical Association has concerns as well.
It's not that the physicians themselves will suffer in this system. There is an option to potentially make more money for some physicians if they can go private in addition to their work in the public system. It's really about what the impact is on the public system.
The province says if passed, the public health system will be carefully monitored, and additional limits to a doctor's ability to practice in the private system may be applied by ministerial order.
There will be no reductions in publicly funded procedures or services, and no Albertan will ever have to pay out of pocket to see their family doctor or receive the medical care they need.
But major reforms to Alberta's health system appear to be coming as the Danielle Smith government presses through a fall agenda that's made plenty of waves. Heather Urix-West, Global News, Calgary.
The federal government is setting aside millions in new funding to train dental students across Canada. The health minister announced more than $35 million for 30 oral health programs at universities and colleges. She says it will help fill competency gaps to ensure more Canadians receive dental care. It's been more than a year since the Liberal government launched its federal dental care plan. The health minister says nearly 6 million Canadians are now using it. It was commuter chaos in Calgary this morning thanks to an early winter snowstorm. 10 to 15 centimeters of snow blanketed Calgary, making driving hazardous. About 50 transit buses were stranded, and more than 180 car crashes have been reported since midnight. Even air travel was stalled at one point. Poor conditions forced Calgary's airport to suspend operations for over an hour, causing delays for travelers. Police in Ontario have now confirmed more fatalities after a deadly house fire in Brampton last week.
4 people lost their lives on scene here, and it's 3 adult females and a young toddler. Sadly, one of the patients at hospital of the 4 was pregnant. She underwent emergency surgery, delivered that baby, and that baby has since passed.
4 people remain in hospital. Police say 11 people were associated with the house, most of them part of a multi-generational family. Fire officials say the home was equipped with smoke alarms. They are investigating whether they were working. A fire that destroyed Toronto's historic St. Anne's Church last year is now being investigated as arson. The century-old building was gutted by flames in June of 2024. That fire also destroyed rare murals painted by members of the Group of Seven. In the U.S., a judge has dismissed all criminal charges against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. Both were critics of President Donald Trump and said the charges against them were political. And President Trump had handpicked the prosecutor who went after them. The judge who dismissed the charges today called them unlawful exercises of executive power. Jackson Proskow reports on what it means and why the whole thing may not be over.
For the White House, it's an embarrassing double defeat that tosses out the rushed and politically directed prosecutions of New York Attorney General Letitia James and former FBI Director James Comey.
I'm grateful that the court ended the case against me, which was a prosecution based on malevolence and incompetence.
The cases fell apart after a federal judge ruled prosecutor Lindsay Halligan was illegally appointed, nullifying her work.
The Department of Justice will be appealing very soon, and it is our position that Lindsay Halligan is extremely qualified for this position, but more importantly, was legally appointed.
Halligan had never prosecuted a case before, but was handpicked by President Donald Trump to go after his perceived enemies, after career prosecutors warned there wasn't enough evidence to move ahead.
We have to act fast, one way or the other, one way or the other. They're guilty, they're not guilty, we have to act fast.
The case is a mess, and it's really amateur hour there at the DOJ, and it's really their own doing because of the timing and the experience of the prosecutor they put on this case.
While grand juries later indicted both Comey and James, the cases were always considered legally shaky and open to claims of vindictive prosecution.
This is nothing more than a continuation of the president's desperate weaponization of our justice system.
The failure is a major blow to Trump's efforts to bend the justice system to his will. There's little reason to think it will end the president's demands for specific prosecutions.
I don't think this is what the Department of Justice is meant to do. It's not good for the American people.
The cases against both Comey and James were dismissed without prejudice, meaning they can be brought again. But that's assuming the administration can actually find another prosecutor who's willing to take them on. Donna?
All right, Jackson Proskow, thank you. Blocked from using social media, coming up why some countries are putting age limits on social networks and the push for Canada to do the same. Like it or not, social media plays a defining role in the lives of most teenagers. But in a few weeks, Australia will take a bold step. The government there intends to ban social media for users under the age of 16. Tech companies will be required by law to prevent children from using their platforms or face huge penalties. As Taria Isri reports, there's a push for Canada to do the same.
Drinking, smoking, and gambling all come with legal age limits. Australia is adding one more to that list: social media.
These services must take reasonable steps to prevent under-16s from holding accounts, and failure to do so could warrant fines of up to $49.5 million.
Starting December 10th, the Australian government is slapping some of the world's toughest laws on big tech, forcing platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, YouTube, Reddit, and Snapchat to comply. That company isn't waiting for the law to kick in. Snapchat, known for its disappearing messages, has already started verifying the ages of Australian users. Some countries like Malaysia and Denmark are planning similar bans.
The amount of time they spend online, the amount of violence, self-harm that they are exposed to online is simply too great a risk for our children.
It's a movement gaining popularity here too. Last month, an Ipsos poll found 84% of Canadians say social media users should be at least 16 years old to join, while 81% want the government to set age limits. Toronto mother of four Robin Shirk is one of them.
They should be developmentally ready to handle these risky compulsive use environments before we put them in them.
She's part of the advocacy group Unplugged Canada, which commissioned the Ipsos poll and organized a petition calling for Canada to follow Australia's lead. But some doubt it would work.
I think it's a terrible idea. It's not feasible, and it absolves tech companies from taking actual steps to put children's well-being first. So
one step, says this researcher, is to reintroduce the Online Harms Act, which died when Parliament prorogued last January. Taria Isri, Global News, Montreal.
Trapped in Sudan, ahead, Canadians tell us about the red tape they've run into trying to get family members out. A suicide bombing outside the headquarters of a Pakistani paramilitary force in Peshawar has killed 3 people, along with 3 attackers. Police say one assailant detonated explosives at the gate, while 2 others carrying guns tried to enter the complex. At least 12 people were hurt. The paramilitary force is responsible for handling situations beyond the capabilities of the police force, including tribal incursions and gang violence. A splinter group of the Pakistan Taliban has reportedly claimed responsibility for the attack. Tens of thousands of people have been killed in Sudan's civil war over the past 2 years, and with the fall of the city of El Fasher in the Darfur region last month, the violence has escalated. The Canadian government does have a system in place to help family members of Canadian citizens or permanent residents come to this country, but advocates complain it is too complicated.
Sudan faces one of the world's worst and most overlooked crises, with millions displaced and families torn apart. Yet, Sudanese applicants still face unequal, unjustified delays in accessing safety in Canada.
As Jeff Semple reports, some people have died waiting to come to Canada.
In Sudan's civil war, children are paying a heavy price. The conflict has spawned the world's largest displacement crisis, and around half of those forced to flee the fighting in Al Fasher are children, like Anas Mohammed. His grandmother motions with her hand for him to come into the tent because she says he lost his hearing after an explosion near their house.
We're also seeing children who've been psychologically scarred, children who've seen family members killed, children who've gone through violence themselves.
Among the children displaced by the violence is 5-year-old Canadian Ronnie Ahmadaldin. He was born in Sudan, and his Canadian father died from lung cancer in 2021. Ronnie's mother says they're living temporarily in Egypt, but face deportation back to their war-torn home. There is no home for us to go back to, she says. The situation is not safe. It's too dangerous for a child. Ronnie has a Canadian passport, but his Sudanese mother's application to come to Canada was rejected. After Sudan's civil war erupted, she applied again on humanitarian grounds. My son does not have access to education, health care, the basic rights that every child should have, she says. In February, the Canadian government announced plans to resettle 4,000 Sudanese refugees by the end of the year and support around 10,000 others through private sponsorships and family reunification. But Sudanese Canadians say the processing times have been painfully slow and the delays can be deadly.
Some of the people lost their, their loved ones while waiting for the applications to be processed.
Sudanese Canadian Ishmael Adam says his cousin was killed when an artillery shell struck his house. His parents and siblings have applied to come to Canada with Adam as their financial sponsor. They've waited 9 months for the family to be approved.
It is slow. There is a lot of bureaucracies, and it seems like the government is not, putting any effort, to expedite the process.
Instead, he says, the government seems focused on striking trade deals, including with the UAE, the same country accused of supporting Sudan's militia, responsible for widespread ethnic violence targeting civilians, including children. Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
And then the harder they come, the harder they'll fall.
Remembering a reggae pioneer, next, the trailblazing music of Jimmy Cliff. He may not have been as famous as Bob Marley, but Jimmy Cliff was the singer who helped turn reggae music of Jamaica into a global phenomenon. Cliff, who has died at the age of 81, was a pioneer whose themes of civil and human rights resonated with so many. Eric Sorensen looks back at his music and his legacy.
Jimmy Cliff moved to London from Jamaica. His first hit introduced many to a sound that would become known as reggae. music that was upbeat and offbeat and socially conscious.
Once I listened to it, I couldn't unlisten to it. That music has stayed with me for all of my life, and I think that was the beginning of the magic of reggae music.
I could make a record.
Cliff became more widely known in the dramatic film The Harder They Come, about the sordid world of a musician starting out in Jamaica.
You get $20 for the record.
$20, sir? That don't sound right.
And then the harder they come, the harder they fall. One and all.
For Jimmy Cliff, music should make you feel good, but also bring about change.
Music can highlight awareness, and from that awareness, people can take some kind of action to better the situation. I think that's the role music has played through the ages.
Cliff blazed a trail for those who would follow, including the reggae legend Bob Marley.
Stand up for your right. Sitting here in limbo.
There was always a message in Cliff's music, says Michael Williams.
A message of peace, a message of love, a message of harmony, bringing people together, but also a message that sends a Molotov cocktail through a glass window as well, in terms of injustice and social justice.
Over 6 decades, Jimmy Cliff recorded 30 albums and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But he'll be best remembered as an original from the golden age of reggae.
And that is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada showcases Victoria Beach, Manitoba, Crescent Lake and Roberts Arm, Newfoundland and Labrador, and the coastline near Parksville, BC. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.